is where it all begins. The vertical people are intelligent and have emotions and a soul. We'll get into that later once everybody really understands the plasma, because that might just freak everyone out when we start with that at the beginning. But we need to connect to the plants on all of these levels to affect significant change within the plants and within the environment around us. Once we understand and connect to the plants, we will in time learn to grow with love and care, and only take what we need and thank them for their contribution. Eventually, over time, we'll be using the knowledge to restore the planet, and that is our ultimate goal. Once we connect on our soul level with the vertical people, we will not be eating them at all. Our journey of learning will also help us to connect with the beings that share our planet, and will teach us how to connect with all other life in the universe. Plasma science is the science of unraveling complicated natural processes and understanding the processes in simple terms. The beauty of creation is revealed for us to understand and utilize for the benefit of all. Okay, so now we start. Agriculture today, and this is the sad part of it, our scientists treat the plants and soils as a chemical process. They look at how each element affects the plant and what it does mechanically. So if we feed it magnesium, it takes away the yellowing in the leaves, for example. We've been taught that fertilizer, what fertilizer to use and what chemical to spray and what bugs to kill. Nobody understands why the more chemicals you spray, the more you need to use, and the more bugs you try to kill, how even more appear. The focus in agriculture today is all about the yield, which means, how much can we grow and how the farmer can produce the biggest amount of crop. So it has nothing to do about the well-being of the plant, the nutritional value of the plant, how the fertilizers are destroying the biology of the soil, because as we know, the more fertilizers you use, the more you need to use, because you've killed everything else in the soil around it. And so by doing that, you constantly need to use more chemicals to even get your things to grow at the end of it. And the overall impact on our environment, how things like fertilizers get washed into rivers, flow down into the sea and cause algae blooms and kill off coral reefs, just like is happening in Australia today. So our current understanding of plants, soils and fertilizer is about to change forever, and we've only been told half of the story. So today we're going to deal with three concepts, and this is concept one, the vertical people. Plants are also known as vertical people because they grow up, they reach tall, and they do not walk around in a horizontal axis like people or animals do. So they are sentient beings and have a physical structure, emotions, and a soul. Many experiments have been done around the world that show how plants react to our thoughts and actions, but this has always been labeled woo-woo science, and we can connect to plants using our emotional level. And when we've connected to our plants, we find that it's like a knowing. So you will just know what your plants need when you start connecting to them. So we're going to show a little clip about plant intelligence, and we couldn't figure out how to get the sound to work well, so you're going to just watch, but please actually just watch, because you need to understand what the plants are doing, and all you need to do is watch it and you'll see. Here we go. Oh. Sorry, we'll start again. Okay, so from that video, we can actually see that the plants compete with each other. They sense where the pole is, they reach, and when one reaches it, the other concedes defeat and tries to look for somewhere else to go because they know that they can't compete for the same light. We've discovered this with our lettuces as well. If you put too many seeds in a small area, then all the lettuces grow small, not because there isn't enough nutrition. There is. It's the fact that they all decide, okay, we'll stay small so that we don't impinge on the other one's space, so they can all grow happily together. So they seem to do it in tandem and work together. So if we look at the universe, we can see that everything is magnetical and gravitational fields. And this is a representation of the universe and how the toroidal fields work in the universe. We all know it's the same for the person, and we've all seen a picture like this of a torus field, but it's exactly the same for the plant too. The plant takes in and puts out gravitational and magnetical fields, and it anchors itself in the earth and gains gravitational fields from the earth and reaches and strives for the sky so that it can get magnetical fields from the sky too. And this is how the interaction of the plants work. So I'm going to hand you over to Jimmy, so he's going to do concept 2.
All right, so the second concept is quite a new one for those that have not involved with plants for a long time, in that our traditional view on plants is that we have to throw chemical fertilizers because they need to absorb the matter in terms of the fertilizer. But essentially what the plants are doing is they are only absorbing the fields from the soil and from the environment. So it's a totally new way of looking at how plants feed themselves. As we've seen with the pictures there, plants have a magnetical and gravitational field. When you look at each plant species, they have different leaves, different shapes of the leaves, the arrangement of those leaves on the branches, the size of the plant, its overall shape. These all produce different maggrav fields. An example of that is when we grow some carrots or beetroots in the ground, they're very hard because of the stronger gravitational fields in the ground. Whereas when you see and pick some fruit hanging on the trees, the fruit is much softer because of the magnetical fields are much stronger the further away we get from the ground. So to illustrate that, we have a look at these pictures here, and we've got pictures of plants growing from the ground cover to tiny little shrubs, bigger shrubs, and the tall trees. So at each level above the ground, we have different magnetical and gravitational fields which the plants are using. This also explains why when you go into a natural forest and you've got this whole variety of plants all around you, from the smallest to the tallest, and as each one is giving you a different magnetical field, a gravitational field, it makes you feel better. You feel very refreshed after you've come out of a walk on the forest, because the plants, when you're walking through the forest, the plants have given you some of their fields. And at the same time, one has to now remember that we also have to give our energy to the plants as well. And in the plant world, one can see how each plant and each variety works together. They all have their little space, but they will accommodate each other. These we've taken from our garden just to illustrate the different shapes of the leaves. When one starts to appreciate nature and really start looking at your plants in the garden, it'll be amazed at the variety that one can get. Here's parsley leaves and passion fruit leaves, totally different. There's a strawberry leaf on the left and a typical fern. Totally different shapes of leaves, different species. So when we look at the different shapes, we have to understand that each shape is interacting with these fields in the environment in a different way. So each shape creates a specific maggraph field to attract those specific fields that the plant needs. If we have a look at the arrangements of the leaves on the stems, we have on the left, we have those leaves which are directly opposite each other. In the middle is what they call a whorl, so you have almost a circular movement of the leaves all around the stem. And the one on the right is alternate, so the leaves aren't opposite, but they are like a step ladder all the way up the stem. So even these shapes, the arrangements on the leaves on the stems also creates different maggraph fields for those different plants. If we look at the leaf margins and the edges of the leaf, you can see some of them are quite serrated, others are very smooth, some have just a few little dents in, and some are very furry on the ends. There you can see on the left is the strawberry plant on the left, which has very defined, almost sawtooth type edges. And the other leaf on the right is very round. There's no real sharp edges barring that one point. So those edges of the leaves also interact with the fields. Those are the edges of your leaves is almost the sort of entry point for the fields to come into the plants. One then has to look at the leaves as well, but the veins within those different leaf structures there. And you can see each plant, each different leaf will have a totally different structure of their veins. And this too adds to the whole dimension of creating a different maggraph field for the plants. The color as well, one has to look at the different colors of the leaves, from purple to yellow to pink. There's a huge variety of colors on the leaves, and these again, with the different colors, are also creating different maggraph fields to attract what they want. Even just if we just look at the color green, we have different shades of green from different plants, and all these different shades of colors do the same thing. They also create different maggraph fields for the plants to attract the different elements that they need. If we look at the thickness of the leaves as well, they also create different maggraph fields. So what you can see is a huge variety in the plant world. They're all doing essentially the same thing. They're all creating their own maggraph fields around the plants, but the different shapes and sizes are creating those specific needs for the plants. So the third concept is plants are living reactors. We've been taught that we need to create our own reactors with the 3 balls and 1 at the top, but essentially the plants are doing that themselves within their structures, because when you look at their height, their shape of leaf, the arrangement of the leaf, the color, the thickness, the vein structure, these all create specific maggraph fields for that particular plant. That plant is then able to attract and create from the environment the fields of the elements that they need for their energy. So each plant is its own little reactor. And the beauty about the nature is one can understand that there's no motors either in the plant world. They're all doing it on a very subtle basis with the plasma. So by understanding how the plants are doing it will give us greater insight into how for us humans to do it in our matter state. So everything we can see is everything interacts with everything else, from the soils to the leaves to the environment, the shapes, as we've gone before. Everything is interacting with everything else through these magnetic fields. As plants are living sentient beings, will we still to continue to eat them in the future? This will be a great question, I think, that many of us will have to contemplate many years down the line, once we start to connect with our plants and nature. But at this stage, I think it's better for us to start communicating and interacting with our plants and almost understanding where our food is coming from and appreciate the plant world. From the plant world, it extends into everything else. When we just have a brief look at our whole plasma ecosystem, the soils that the plants have grown into is also a living entity. The bacteria, the fungi, earthworms, insects, they're all living entities. These are also connected to our rocks, crystals, and minerals in the soils, which are also living entities. These are all connected to the earth, which is another living entity. So we can move from the universe all the way down to the bacteria in the soil. It is all the same. Everything's connected with everything else, but just on a different scale. So everything is alive and everything is interacting with everything else. So the summary of that is that the three concepts that we want you to take home is that plants are essentially now called vertical people because they have their own emotions and souls. The plants are interacting with the fields to obtain their food source. And plants are living reactors.